For millions of people, Gene Wilder wasn't just an actor, he was the face of imagination. Whether he was leading children through a mysterious chocolate factory or making audiences laugh alongside Richard Pryor, Gene had a rare gift. He could make you laugh, make you wonder, and sometimes do both at the exact same time. But behind those unforgettable performances was a remarkable story, filled with kindness, heartbreak, and one of Hollywood's most extraordinary careers. This is the story of the man behind the magic, Gene Wilder.
Right there. It seems to me that in all the parts you've played, there's a quality of innocence.
That's my father, I think. My father was born in Russia and came to America when he was 11 years old. And I thought all the time that my artistic tendencies came from my mother, who was studying to be a concert pianist. And I found out many years later that the real bulk of whatever I was doing, the roots of it, the well, had more to do with my father and that naive innocence that he brought over with him from the old country. I know this quality that you're talking about. It's like a vulnerability. I had come much closer to the opinion that I was here for more specific purposes in my work than I had ever thought about before, and that they seemed to have to do with doing bizarre actions realistically, and that was best served for me in a comedy. I got a great thrill out of that, a joy, and it seemed to be what I could do better than other actors.
Chained like a beast in a cage.
By the mid-1960s, Gene Wilder was still a relatively unknown stage actor. He had talent, he had dedication, but Hollywood had no idea who he was. That was about to change, thanks to one man with a wild imagination named Mel Brooks. His performance in The Producers earned him an Academy Award nomination and introduced Hollywood to a remarkable new talent. But just a few years later, Gene Wilder would take on the role that would define him forever. It wasn't just another children's movie. It was Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. At first glance, Wonka seemed playful, even whimsical, but Gene saw something deeper. He believed the character should always remain a mystery. Before filming began, Gene made one unusual request. He told the director he would only play Willy Wonka if his very first entrance began with a limp, a cane, and then, without warning, a perfectly timed somersault. When asked why, Gene had a simple answer: because from that moment on, no one will know if I'm telling the truth or lying. If Willy Wonka introduced Gene Wilder to millions around the world, his next chapter would prove that his greatest talent wasn't just creating unforgettable characters, it was creating unforgettable chemistry. And no one brought that out of him more than Richard Pryor.
We got to make them cops think you're black.
It'll never work.
Never.
Woody,
Thanks for everything.
My pleasure.
On screen, they couldn't have been more different. Richard Pryor was fast, fearless, and explosive. Gene Wilder was calm, thoughtful, and wonderfully unpredictable. But together, they found a rhythm that audiences couldn't get enough of. They went on to star in 4 films together, becoming one of Hollywood's most beloved comedy partnerships. Their timing was effortless, their friendship genuine, and decades later, their performances still make audiences laugh. But while Gene's career continued to reach new heights, his greatest love was still waiting just around the corner. For all the success Gene found on screen, the most important role in his life happened away from the cameras. In 1981, he met actress and comedian Gilda Radner. Their connection was immediate. Friends described them as inseparable, and before long, they were married.
I can see a swath of sinners sitting yonder, and they're acting like a pack of fools, gazing into space and let their minds wander instead of studying the good Lord's rules. You better pay attention to your comprehension. There's gonna be a quiz at your ascension, not to mention any fret up. You better start to learn your lessons well.
But their happiness would be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. In 1986, Gilda was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Despite years of treatment, and Jean's unwavering support. She passed away in 1989. It was the greatest heartbreak of his life. Rather than letting grief define him, Jean chose to honor Gilda's memory. He became a passionate advocate for cancer awareness, helping inspire what would eventually become the Gilda Radner Ovarian Cancer Program and supporting efforts to improve early detection. Gene Wilder passed away in 2016, but nearly a decade later, his films continue to inspire new generations. Whether you remember him as Willy Wonka, the brilliant Dr. Frankenstein, or one half of one of comedy's greatest partnerships, Gene Wilder gave the world something that never goes out of style: kindness, imagination, and the reminder that sometimes the quietest people leave the loudest legacy.